Thank you very much, Taylor. I'm excited to be here today, and thank you for also talking about our work together at Riverside. So, as you know, Riverside is in New York City. It's between Riverside Drive and 120th Street. Sorry, and you can go to the next slide, please. So today I'm going to share with you just a quick overview of what is included in our greening study, what the objectives are, and also kind of put into context of what Atelier 10 and what I do versus what an architect does. I'll describe the range of interventions that we discovered through this process and then talk about what could be next for Riverside. Next slide, please. So it's really a campus of buildings. There is the very iconic tower and sanctuary that you may be familiar with. And there's also a building, the MLK building, which houses a variety of spaces, including administrative offices and classrooms and school spaces and rentable functional spaces. There is a smaller building that serves as a gymnasium. And then on the northeast corner is McGiffert Hall, which is a residential building. Next slide, please. So Atelier 10 and our team here was part of this larger effort that Taylor described, that MBB brought together mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers Kohler Ronan, as well as Slocum Consulting, to do cost estimating. So really, it's a joint effort together. And so my perspective today is really about the sustainability side. But for a study like this, it really requires the expertise of a larger team. Next slide, please. So at the high level, the study objectives were to determine where could there be energy savings and how do those relate to the savings of and reduction of carbon emissions. What type of sustainable practices are already included and what else could be done? We were very interested in understanding the cost and potential cost neutrality of the interventions, and then also commenting on the long-term viability. This was actually a pretty quick study that we did. It was only 4 weeks long. And so the first week we got on site, we toured the building, we crunched a lot of numbers and collaborated the second and third weeks, and then we synthesized our recommendations in the fourth week. Next slide, please. So what does Atelier 10 do? What does a sustainability design focused firm do versus an architect? Well, we're very much used to working with architects and engineers. So we're a collaborative member of a design team, but we are consultants and we look across disciplines to improve environmental health, to improve the comfort of buildings, to improve water conservation measures, to introduce integrated technologies that help the renewable systems work better and do more for the building. We also help prioritize a range of measures by understanding the magnitude of impact that those could bring. So we do a lot of analysis and diagramming of concepts versus an architect or an engineer who is incorporating those recommendations and turning them into real buildable projects. Next. So on our walkthrough, this is just an example of some of the opportunities we saw for improving. Many existing buildings have older windows, for example, and could greatly benefit from air sealing. So we took a survey at those to see the extent of that opportunity for improvement. We looked at the lighting fixtures. We looked at what types of air conditioning systems there were, centralized or window air conditioners. We also looked at some of the plumbing fixtures, the recycling and waste programs. There actually is currently a process and project at the church to install protective glazing, but when we were there, that was not in place yet. And then, as some of you may know, the organs are very sensitive instruments, and to keep the space and the organ properly operating and in tune, the whole space is being climate controlled. There are, I think, some pretty significant opportunities to try to localize that so that the entire space doesn't need intensive air conditioning, heating, and humidification. Next slide, please. Some of the other areas that we looked at the type of heating systems, the age of the chiller plant, the cooling tower, and older ventilation systems that may have been abandoned. We looked importantly at kitchen equipment. So commercial kitchens tend to use a lot of energy. We looked at the range of lighting control systems, such as manual controls, the extent of the thermostats, and just general understanding of how the space was used and opportunities for maybe reprogramming some of the space. So this is different than those ASHRAE level 2 and 3 audits. This is more of a quick walkthrough and using our kind of green hats to develop some ideas. Next slide, please. So out of that observation came a range of potential interventions that are really moving towards this kind of holistic sustainability concept. So this is why Taylor was saying this, not totally focused on Local Law 97, but here is a list of all the things that we think could be addressed. And so what do we do with such a big list? Well, with respect to energy, for example, we wanted to sort them into different categories for, say, like kind of easily implementable or low-hanging fruit to more involved processes that would require additional studies and funding concepts like you've been hearing about today. Next slide, please. So this was just to kind of talk back to that first presentation about those Local Law 97 prescriptive measures. So if you're going to be downloading this, again, the slideshow, I would recommend downloading the first one. And just to let you know, we did not use this list as part of our study, but out of this list, I've noted where there are some synergies with the prescriptive measures. So next, please. One of the first concerns that most building owners have is, well, would I have a penalty for Local Law 97 and how big would that be? So we took a stab at estimating what the total site carbon emissions are according to the rules for Local Law 97, and then compared those to the city published limits. And out of that kind of gives us a sense of how close are we to those limits? And so for Riverside, we found that it was very likely that we're much higher than the allowable limit, which means that there's a lot of opportunity for improving the efficiency in the building. So next slide, please. As I had mentioned, what do we do first? And how challenging or easy would that be? So from our study, we developed a hierarchy or a kind of set of recommendations. For some buildings, it might be easy to just electrify, take out the fossil fuel-based systems and put in, say, heat pumps. But other buildings need, and larger buildings may actually find that improving the building envelope is necessary. If you don't do that, you may have such large heating and air conditioning needs that the new electric system will be too large. So these, kind of energy measures were estimated in terms of what we could do to save energy. We, on the left here is some of the low-hanging fruit that we saw. And on the right would be a really big lift. You could imagine for a campus this large and the typology, insulating the building is kind of an overwhelming feat. But there is some benefit to doing that in a kind of tactical way. I've also noted here that some of these items are underlined. Those are corresponding back to those prescriptive measures for Local Law 97. Next, please. So we divided up our improvement concepts between the different buildings. So this list, for example, shows what we found for the church and MLK. At a minimum, we found that there could be a lot of energy reduction measures that could be achieved through replacing double glazed windows, sealing the any kind of broken glass and frames, upgrading the lighting, adding in energy recovery, replacing any kind of interior equipment with high performance or energy efficient Energy Star appliances will go a long way, as well as we recommend having a look at new equipment for the catering kitchen that is would be state of the art in energy savings. We also looked at kind of non-energy opportunities with respect to creating a healthier air quality on the inside. So green cleaning, expanding the recycling signage and receptacles, thinking about entering into some kind of composting program with the kitchen. These are the types of things that maybe a committee together may want to talk about when they say, how could we have a greener campus? How could we have our values around green be measurable and visible when we spend time on the campus? Next, please. Then for McGifford Hall, which is the residential building, we had a slightly different list that's customized to that building because it's a residential building. The opportunities are really focused on improving thermal comfort and reducing the energy bills, in addition to repairing ventilation systems. So here we had a list of baseline recommendations and then optimal measures. And the optimal measures were really kind of pushing the envelope, looking at goals such as Passive House, which some people may have heard about, which is a deep energy savings process for renewing buildings. Next, please. And then campus-wide, we looked at, well, how could we take advantage of the interconnection and just the size of the property? There were a number of bigger opportunities here, but I just want to focus on one of the early questions, actually two of the early questions. One was, could they go geothermal, and could they install PV somewhere on the campus? So that's what I'll kind of focus on next here. Next slide, please. So just taking a step back, we started looking at, well, where could we put solar? Where does it make sense to look into? Is it worth it? Are the buildings shaded? Where would they go, and which roof looks most promising? Number one was that on the top left corner is probably the most promising roof for solar, given its kind of least obstructed area and kind of cleanest, largest surface. Next. And then for geothermal, what are the benefits and challenges? So they're highly efficient, they're all electric. It's a non-fossil fuel system, but it would require the conversion of the entire campus to a water-based system. And there's space constraints. So to put in such a system would require drilling somewhere on the campus, or looking at going in the sidewalk, which is what would need to be looked at in order to see if it was very viable. So next. So, okay, that was kind of like the quick view on our greening study. And out of that, we said, well, what are the next steps, right? Here are your lists. Here's our recommendations. Here's the hierarchy. So next slide, please. There is a strong interest in understanding the viability of the geothermal system, a centralized all electric heating and cooling system for the campus. And so the Riverside Church asked us to do an energy analysis, which is a model of their existing campus, and to look at how we could get to geothermal. And what we found was really interesting is where we could leverage the greatest amount of savings before updating the HVAC was to really look at the envelope. And so this is really not so much like an exact science, even though these numbers look very, kind of precise, but it's really about understanding the magnitude of savings of what you could do where. And so the results of the study were that we felt that geothermal could be used, but it really was dependent on the improvement of kind of strategic improvement of the envelope, meaning the walls and roof where we could. Next slide, please. So how do you make a decision about this? Well, Andrew was talking about that savings to investment ratio. So it's important to look at the life cycle cost and to do a more precise engineering study for the application of the heat pumps, to look at how the facade could be upgraded and how that would be priced. The interior HVAC systems would also need to be swapped out and designed and priced. And then we also recommended a kitchen equipment replacement to reduce the energy loads as well. Aside from that geothermal system, we recommended a water conservation program. Water costs are going up, and if it's time to replace some of your water fixtures, you might as well do that with low flow to save on your water costs. We also embarked on a renewable energy system. That's the PV, photovoltaic panel, solar panel study on the roof of the church. And next is to take a closer look at the city benchmarking Local Law 97. Depending on the scale of this renovation, we also think that this type of work could lead to a LEED certification. So if that's of interest as a way to kind of align green practices, this is the kind of, this is a good fit, in other words, to engage in a LEED certification process. Next, please. So I just wanted to thank everybody for having me today. I see some folks in the audience who contributed to this study, and I really thank you also for joining. And we hope that we can help all of you in the future have greener properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanta. And thanks to each of you. And one person who's here on our panel, but we haven't mentioned yet, and a tremendous thanks to, is Meda Brunzima, who organized both of these events, made us an architect and planner with the Architecting Collective for Community, Culture, and Environment, and is on the faculty of the Pratt Institute. We're very, very grateful for all the work she's put into this. So that gets us to the end of our presentations and into the Q&A. A lot of the questions are being answered as they ask. So if you would like to see the answer to your question, or the answer to anybody's question, please check that in the Q&A. But we have just a few minutes for a conversation about this, since we have all of these remarkable panelists with us. And the first, I think, is to bring, as Shanta did, bring the conversation back to Local Law 97 compliance. That with a partnership with Block Power for electrification, or a partnership with Crowder Roof for solar PV installation, or being part of a community solar project, or through financing with PACE or analysis with Solar One. Just as a reminder to reframe this, what the upshot from our session one is that churches are treated differently than any other building type under Local Law 97. Local Law 97 sets a performance limit for buildings where you are allowed up to so much carbon, and any carbon you use beyond that is taxed, is levied against you. Churches aren't treated that way, where they have to do an assessment to establish your energy performance, and then an analysis to say, if we do these things to our building, it will improve our performance this amount. That goes through the accelerator to tell you whether or not they think that's going to be adequate, and then ultimately to the DOB as your compliance with Local Law 97, which means that what you can or should do is rather open-ended. It means that compliance is a rather subjective matter of analysis on the city side. Did you do enough? And every building and every situation is going to be different. So maybe we'll just start with, maybe I'll ask Ian first. Does Block Power do an energy audit that fits the bill for local law 97 compliance as part of your analysis at the kickoff of any project?
Not quite. From our perspective, it's sort of just doing a high level analysis to at least get us to the point of a deeper conversation, right? Are we moving in the right direction? I think we can all admit it's quite a heavy lift to do an analysis of that magnitude. But for us to get to an actual project, we do recognize that information is necessary and viable. So, on the first sort of go around, what we're trying to do is just to at least get you to a point of engagement. And then if that ASHRAE level audit is required for you to make sure that you're in compliance, might it be for the sanctuary, the rectory, the parsonage, then we'll move down that path.
And Rob, same for you. We know that you do these analyses as part of your initial sort of partnership with an organization. Is that a energy audit that'll satisfy local law 97, or again, is that sort of a step on the way?
Right. So there are two things that we do, but to first directly answer your question, Taylor, then yes, and this is something that through our collaboration with the New York State Council of Churches, we've spoken about in quite a bit of depth, that we don't in-house conduct energy audits. Just to be clear, that's not what we do. But what we want to help faith-based organizations around the city do is to take care of all compliance issues first and foremost. And of course, energy efficiency, electrification, there's a lot of other things that can be accomplished along the way, but there's a 2024 deadline, right? And that's pressing. So we want to essentially work backwards from the regulatory piece to make sure that churches don't get hit with any unexpected fines, penalties, which can be quite stiff, and to use it as a great opportunity too. There's so much that can be done. So there's sort of a carrot and stick here, but yes, we want to make sure that compliance is met. So we will be working alongside with resources from the accelerator. We'll be working alongside and help you find the right energy auditor. And then the question is, how are you going to pay for it, right? And that's, I think, where we excel is finding the best way. And what we've learned is the best and easiest, can be but sometimes a third party coming in and you're not having to pay is easy and you're done. And that's helpful. But there are other times when maybe you want to look a little deeper to capture more of the economic savings. And we really want to have a thoughtful conversation about what's in the best interest of the house of worship and your congregants and your broader community about what the best improvements are for what you're trying to achieve, how you can pay for it, and what the multitude of benefits that could arise from this can happen. There's compliance, and then, as I was saying, there are opportunities to go above and beyond and package those other benefits like on-site resiliency into an effort to comply with local law 97. So it's not really a distinct effort, but we're looking at them at the same time.
And while you're on that, could you just say a couple words about local law 92 and 94?
Yes.
Which are another set of sustainability laws the city passed that require the installation of solar or green roof as part of a new roof construction or some roof replacement projects.
That's right. So when there's a substantial replacement of a roof, not when you're adding a new layer, a second or a third layer, that's not going to trigger building code. This is a change to building code in New York City. So local law 92 and 94 to clarify is a building code change that requires solar and or a green roof on a new or existing roof. An existing roof when essentially you're doing a full tear off and replace of the roof, or somehow replacing the frame of a building. Local law 92 has certain carve outs For affordable housing, essentially solar where feasible, which the Housing Preservation Department has defined as a payback of 10 years or less. And Local Law 94 is really every other building in New York City. So for that, we need to take a look at your roof and consider where the required roof area is that would require a green roof or solar. Essentially, from an economic perspective, you're always going to want to do solar. We can show you the numbers. We've done green roofs as well. We love green roofs. It's unfortunate there are not better incentives for them. But if you need a green roof, then we can be thoughtful about how you can do that. And perhaps, Andrew, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that a green roof improvement, so long as we can make a case that there are certain energy improvements that are being generated from that, that may be one of the less cost-effective options of a financed deal, but that it could be folded into other energy efficiency improvements, so that so long as everything together gets a 20-year payback or 25-year payback, depending on the source of funds, that we can help you to comply with those other local laws while we're also addressing Local Law 97 issues.
Taylor, I just wanted to quickly point out, since Local Law 97 requires an energy study, that those houses of faith that have energy bills of less than $100,000 a year can take advantage of a very, very low cost program that we actually covered in our last Local Law 97 forum, and you can check the recording of that. And that is called the Green Jobs, Green New York program. And so, in other words, that is very, very low cost way of getting this energy study that's required.
That's right. And to be clear around all of the solar feasibility study work that we're doing, as well as early stage energy efficiency technical assistance, and we have grant support from the state of New York and NYSERDA to assist you with that as well, in collaboration, as I stated earlier, with the New York State Council of Churches and the Interfaith Housing Collaborative.
Yeah, just to follow on Rob's point, that if, I tried to bring this out a little bit in my presentation, but we have 2024, well, there's some, faith-based organizations have some slightly different pathways, but generally speaking, we have thresholds in 2024 and 2030, and it's going to go on until 2050, until all of our buildings are electric and decarbonized. And so when you're looking at the financing for a few things, and this is where PACE can come into play, is having this long-term financing and consolidating as much of this as you can at the outset. And again, you will add in, the longer the loan goes, the smaller the payment is, and the more items you add, solar or ECMs, the more savings you can create. And you could hopefully create a scenario where you're offsetting your payment and maybe, again, creating even positive cash flow. So understanding is in 2024, all but 20% of the buildings are going to meet the threshold with no penalty. By 2030, it's the reverse. It's like all but, only 20% meet the threshold. So it really makes sense if you can swing it, financially to step back and take a bigger picture view.
And just while we're on that, could you clarify the savings to investment ratio? Does a 1.0 mean that it's a break-even prospect over the life of the loan? Is that what that translates to?
Yeah, yes, yeah, that's right. But it's done, technically the SIR, the numerator of the benefits, so if you have a 30-year loan, it's every saving over the 30 years. It's supposed to include societal benefits. So you're talking about green roofs, those have benefits to the city in terms of storm runoff, but I'm not sure, I've asked this question, I don't know how you quantify that, but there is ways of adding that more and more benefits. For instance, avoidance of Local Law 97 penalties is a benefit. So that would go into the calculation. But yes, to answer your question, basically it's all those benefits over the cost, and the loan is going to be net of all of the incentives you get. So yeah, I don't think it's a big, I mean, yeah, you may have trouble meeting that ratio, but I haven't heard where that's usually, once a PACE loan is put into place, that's not, usually I think you can get there.
But again, ensuring that you meet that ratio is a matter of analysis. It means doing the energy audit, and it means doing an analysis of the project that you're proposing. So what we've learned that while there are a lot of resources around the table here today, the vendors that will do an energy audit that is the first step for compliance for houses of worship, that's a particular set of vendors. And we understand that the accelerator is putting out a list of approved vendors that will be available to houses of worship to choose from to come in. And as Maida said, there are programs if your energy bills are less than $100,000. The Green Jobs, Green New York, is that what it is? It's a little clunky. That for $100 or $500, they can come in and do that. So that's going to be an incredibly important resource that when it's available, we will make available. So Bricks and Mortals on the website, we are going to be assembling sort of resources and links and helpful things on that website that are going to be available to you going forward. And once that list comes out, that's going to be a really important resource. So
if I can jump in here, and
please.
Yeah, one of the questions, I think I responded to the questions, but please, if I missed any, please let me know. But one of them was asking about, I didn't see it when I went back, whether Catalyst loan is available. And basically it is. I mean, we need to go through a process where it has to fit, it has to sort of be customized to New York City as it was for Connecticut. But right now we're looking for projects to do. We're trying to identify some pilot projects. So the process might take a little longer because we're figuring out some of it. But if there was, whoever asked that question, if there's a building that you'd like to get a Catalyst loan for, by all means, please let me know. And we can make you part of this pilot. We have one that we've identified, which is a large affordable housing project in the Bronx, but we would like to get a few more. And also the other thing we're going to do here is put this survey question out in the, I guess, in the chat, and maybe we could do that now, which will allow any of you that were asking about connecting with the accelerator, if you just respond, it's just one question, then we will follow up and get back to you.
So let's do a quick lightning round, closing comments. Ian, do you want to jump in first? Anything you'd like to share?
Oh, I mean, I appreciate everyone putting this together and allowing us to participate and be part of this great panel. As I alluded to earlier, BlockPower is a turnkey solution, a one-stop shop. We make buildings greener, healthier, and smarter, and we look forward to working with you and being of service.
Thanks, Ian. Rob?
To take a step back and think about why we're here, there is an important law that we need to comply with. But at the end of the day, houses of worship have missions as a congregation, missions as a member of a community. And complying with Local Law 97 provides a very exciting opportunity to extend that mission into a new realm. And we want to be your partner when it comes to not just the technical piece and the economic piece, but from the mission piece as well. So that's where we come from, and that's how we would like to work with you when it comes to Local Law 97.
Thanks, Rob. Andrew?
You know what? I just want to say I think it's really great. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I think Bricks and Mortal is a really great organization, and I wasn't aware of it until recently. And I thank you for bringing together all of these, kind of common-minded or like-minded people that need to address Local Law 97. And I just will also say, please reach out. We are here. The city, I think New York City is fantastic, doing tremendous work and being a leader in this space. And I know there are things we have to do. We have to work on this, and there's compliance to do, but Accelerator is free here to help you do it. And so I just encourage you all to reach out. By putting out this compliance requirement, they're also giving you this service, and I encourage you to use it.
Thank you, Andrew. Shanta, the last word, and then I've got a couple things to say.
Okay, thank you so much. Just the same that the others have said. And if I just would add on, I would just really encourage everybody to bring together the congregations to find out what's important for you, for what does it mean to have a green space? What does it mean to have a healthier New York City? And what can you do with your building to reflect that? That's really our point of view when we look to that, and then we see these programs as avenues towards achieving those goals, and that will in the end make New York City all the better. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks, Shanta, and to each of you. So you should have seen a survey come up that you can quickly answer while you're doing that. The last thing I'd like to say about this is that what we've heard over these two sessions is Local Law 97 is complicated. It's unique to every institution and every building, and compliance is going to be a process. The reason Bricks and Mortals attached to this so particularly as an issue that we wanted to help inform and help engage with congregations in, I'd like to call Bricks and Mortals a support group for faith-based organizations that have complicated relationships with their real estate. And with Local Law 97 compliance, that is now everyone. So the way through this is going to be together. A support group is different from a webinar. So the more that we can talk to each other, the more that we can share our experiences through this process, the better it's going to be for all of us getting through it. So that's what Bricks and Mortals is for. That we are a place to collect and share wisdom and share information. Like Kate said, we do things like this, webinars and panels that are really about information sharing, but those member meetings where we have case studies from members that speak to each other, that's wisdom sharing. And that's, I think, sharing wisdom through the process of Local Law 97 compliance is the way through it. So as wonderful as it is to have experts on, to have this information shared, to get this out to this community, I think the conversation we'll have among ourselves is going to be critical to sort of the future of the viability of these institutions, the future of the sustainability of the city, and ultimately compliance with this very complicated law. So with that, I'll close it out unless anybody has any last things to say. Thank you so much for joining us.